welcome and Happy New Year, everybody. This is the January 2025 Q&A on moving to France. I'm Allison Grant Lounes. I own the relocation agency Your Transformation. I'm the author of the book Foolproof French Visas, which is now this is the 5th edition, the complete 2024-2025 edition, available on Amazon and our website. I run the group Americans in France. I host a podcast, Profiles in Transformation, and we help dozens of people move to France every year to follow their dream of living here. We work primarily with people who are self-employed, starting businesses, or retiring, and also family members of French and EU citizens. So people who are moving independently, who are not being sponsored by a company, and people who have the intention of staying long-term in France and want to make sure that they're doing everything right. In today's Q&A, I have a lot of questions that were submitted. I'm going to do the best I can in getting through all of them in an hour. If your question doesn't get answered, I'm sorry. Last month, I was on for about an hour and a half to get through all the questions, and I really have to limit it to just an hour. I do these every month. If your questions don't get answered, if you end up with a bunch more questions and would like personalized assistance, you can book an individual paid consultation with me to go through all your questions, your timeline, etc. So, welcome to this month's Q&A. I can't believe we're in January already. Today is Epiphany, so you should eat some galette des rois. I was crowned queen yesterday in our galette with our friends, so I hope you get to enjoy that as well. All right, I'm going to just go ahead and jump right into the questions that were submitted, and I will try to go fast so that we can get through all of them. This is being recorded. It will be posted on YouTube. It probably won't get sent out until at least Friday, possibly next Monday, because our assistant who does that is on vacation until Wednesday. But if it goes too fast, if I speak too quickly, you can watch the replay on YouTube and slow it down. All right, first question, Jess, if you're remote part-time and are wanting to find another job remote and live in Paris or find a job there, what visa is recommended? Okay, so anytime that you are living in France and working, doesn't matter where the company is, you need to have a work visa in order to be able to work well in France. You need to have either the company is sponsoring you and sponsoring your visa, or you have to have a structure that enables you to be self-employed or have a company so that you can invoice this job that you are working for remotely. And then you need to be paying your social charges and income taxes in France first. Typically, there's a couple different ways that you can do it. If you want to work for multiple companies, the best way is to be self-employed, because unfortunately, if you have a visa that is sponsored by an employer, you're only allowed to work for that employer, and you're not allowed to be self-employed on the side. Can you apply for a visa while you're traveling and are out of Schengen but not in the United States? You need to apply for your French visa in a country where you have citizenship or residence. If you are, for example, a US citizen with a right to remain in the UK, you can apply in London. If you're a Canadian citizen with a green card, you can apply in the US or you can apply in Canada. But you can't just go on vacation to Tunisia and apply for your visa there while you're on vacation. Do you have recommendations for lawyers, translators, etc.? I'm trying to obtain my CNF. I suppose that's the Certificat de Nationalité Française. You must have it through your parentage. And need help with the application process. I bought the online course but did not see this covered. Yeah, this isn't covered in our online programs because it applies to so few people. I am going to put the link in the chat to our referrals form. So if you fill this out and let us know what you need referrals to, we will be happy to send that out. CNF isn't necessarily something that we can deal with because we're not lawyers. So, Robert, how long or how many days staying in France require filing French taxes? There's a couple different criteria to become a French tax resident. One of those criteria is spending 183 days or more in France, but it's not the only one. If you have a long stay visa that enables you to reside in France, that is making you a French tax resident. So if you have a French visa, you move to France with the intention to reside, you should be filing French taxes starting with the first day that you arrived in France. With a 1-year visa, can I leave France and the Schengen area and return on the same visa? Yes. Christine, I have applied for my short stay 6 month, thinking it would be fine by January. and I planned for a trip to visit my mother in January. They have extended my approval process until March because they cannot complete it in time. Can I leave and come back? Unfortunately, that's really common. My renewal has been in limbo since June. I submitted mine 3 days after it opened up, 4 months before my card expired, and you just have to wait. And you have a paper saying that you're waiting, and there's nothing that you can do, and there's nothing to speed it up. Patience is something that you need to learn. Now, if you are a US, Canadian, British citizen and you have typically the ability to travel in and out of the Schengen area with your passport, and you do not require a tourist visa in order to enter, most people are not going to have problems returning to France with just the proof that it's been submitted. Can't guarantee it. I would take all of your documentation with you, but in our experience, people have not had issues. They might once the ETS pre-authorization system comes into effect, but as of right now, there's not a problem. Should I be applying for my residency card if I am already living here? I am retired and arrived in June. My husband is Dutch and I am American. We are both retired. We have bank accounts, insurance, own a house. We just need help with what is needed for us both. Okay, so your husband who is Dutch doesn't really need to do anything in order to live in France. If you're American and you're the spouse of an EU citizen, you should have applied for a residence permit within 3 months of arrival. Oh, is that what you mean? Your short stay? Because this is the same person. As an American spouse of an EU citizen, you need to have a residence permit as the family member of an EU citizen in order to reside in France. And if you didn't apply for your card within 90 days of arriving, you might have an issue. You might have to leave and come back and then start the 90 days from a new arrival date or something like that. Wendy, what does the business plan look like to apply for a micro-entreprise visa? Foolproof French Visas explains the 4 different types of self-employment visas and the documents that are needed, but it doesn't go into a lot of detail about how to prepare those documents. We have a program, the Complete French Business Incubator, that is a 9-module program that goes through everything that should be included in a business plan. Some of the things that you're going to include are the typical things like your background, who do you serve, what are your rates, what are your expenses, things like that. But a lot of the information that goes into putting together these business plans is actually more about understanding how your business type is going to work in France. Like if you're going to be a micro-entrepreneur, you don't want to talk about a lot of different business expenses because you're not able to deduct them. You're not looking for angel investors for your startup. You're looking to show them that you've done your homework, that you understand what's going to be required for running your business in France, and that you're going to be doing legal activities that you're qualified to do. Do I need another visa to go with the micro-entreprise visa? No, you get one visa at a time of one kind. Helen, I retired from my work in a school division in order to work as an author. I earn a pension in Canada, but receive publishing money from my publishing house in the UK, pay taxes in Canada. What sort of visa would I require and how would that scenario work? So if you're receiving royalties for something that's published, that's passive income, and it doesn't necessarily require a particular visa. So you could be on a retirement visa. Because the work was published before you moved to France, that would continue to be normally have to check the tax treaty. Normally that would continue to be taxed in Canada. It depends a little bit on the tax treaty because it depends on where you were residing when the work is published. And it's different if you're self-employed and like a self-published author on Amazon versus if you are receiving royalties from a publishing house. Sue, what is your best advice for writing a compelling statement of purpose letter? You don't have to overthink it. You don't have to be compelling, especially if you're retiring to France. You want to say that that's your plan, that you plan to stay for multiple years. If you plan to purchase a property, you want to be clear that you know you're not supposed to work, you're not intending to work. If you plan to be in France long term and you want a renewable visa, then say that. And then just identify a couple of things that you like about France. Like, oh, I'm really looking forward to trying 57 varieties of cheese or things like that. You don't have to overdo it. You just want to make sure that you're communicating that you know what is and what isn't allowed on your visa type. Karina, I've heard a super official birth certificate is required later in the process of moving to France, such as for health insurance. Yes. I'm a US citizen but born in Russia. My birth certificate doesn't have a time of birth, which I've heard is standard for Russian birth certificates. Okay, I would say that you're not likely to have a problem. What they are looking for is, are your parents' names on there, place of birth, date of birth? They are looking to be able to establish a French birth certificate in your name and to be sure that it accurately reflects the official document in your home country. I would say see if you can check with like groups of Russians in France. They might know better whether or not anybody has had an issue registering for healthcare with a birth certificate that lacks a time of birth. I do say, in regards to the birth certificate, a lot of Americans have a certificate from the hospital that just says, congratulations, and then the name of the baby. And it looks like it's a certificate that comes with a Cabbage Patch Kid. That is not the birth certificate that you need to register for the French healthcare system. You need the vital records with the long form birth certificate that shows all of the information. Melissa, we have kids who currently attend French immersion school in kindergarten and third grade. How would we go about registering them for French public school? So, registering kids for public school is a requirement before you apply for their visas. And it can be a little bit tricky because sometimes different towns are reluctant to register kids for school if they're not exactly sure if and when you're going to show up. The best thing to do, first, you're going to select the town where you're going to live. Your kids are young, so you're going to contact the local town hall, the mairie, and figure out how to start the process based on their website or based on talking with people from the mairie. Now, sometimes they will take all of your information and they will give you a pre-enrollment certificate, and then they'll just say, okay, when you arrive in France, come and finalize the paperwork in person at the town hall. In other situations, as I said, they can be reluctant to do much work for you, finalize everything if they're not sure that you're going to show up. In that case, make sure you get some communication by email to show that you've been in contact with the school where you're going to be located, and usually that's sufficient. If you can show that you did your best to enroll them in school and the town didn't want to, that's fine, usually. I wanted to say something else about that, which was, if your kids are older, if they're in collège and lycée, then it's much more of a regional thing. So they could be, for example, in any collège in the city or any lycée in the city. You're going to actually contact the Department of Education for the town that you're depending on. The other thing too is, if your kids don't speak French fluently, in elementary, it's pretty easy because there's going to be like one or two schools that have a program called UPE2A, that stands for Unité Pédagogique pour Élèves Arrivant Allophones, so children who are arriving in France who do not speak French. And they try to group them all in the same school. Now, some towns have UPE2A in several schools because there's a lot of immigrants. In other smaller towns, they don't have it. In middle and high school, there's going to be certain designated schools that have that designation. And we have a client who, for whatever reason, she ended up moving to a town where there was no UPE2A for her 13-year-old daughter. And she mentioned something about, oh, well, they wanted to send her to XYZ school, but it has a bad reputation. And I would invite you to question how much of the bad reputation comes from the fact that there are a lot of non-French speaking kids and immigrants in the town that call for a UPE2A. So I would not necessarily pay mind to negative opinions about a particular school on the basis of the fact that they have this program. For our clients, we are doing the school pre-enrollment stuff for you. Gina, I'm about to retire from my job and have sufficient social security. I understand I would file taxes in both France and the US, but my earnings would be from US investments and I would not be taxed on my US income by France. That's correct. You do have to declare all of your income in France, but any of your retirement income would not be taxed in France. If some of your income is from interest, dividends, taxable brokerage accounts, things like that, it's possible that some of that would be subject to the PUMA premium for registering for French healthcare. I would like to purchase a home and eventually obtain French citizenship, but would obtaining citizenship be possible under those circumstances? Okay, so here's the thing. The tax treaty with France is very favorable to Americans, especially Americans who are retired. Brits, for example, have to declare their pensions in France and they're taxable in France, which is very different. The problem is, if you are not paying taxes in France, do you have a path to citizenship? And that is a question that is answered differently in each department. Financial stability is one criteria of integration, but it's not a guarantee that you would be able to get French citizenship if you're always paying zero taxes. It really depends on who's looking at your file. In my opinion, the better, this isn't possible for everybody, and not everybody wants to work after they're retired, but in my opinion, the better way to do it is to work or be self-employed at least 5 years, apply for citizenship, continue your activity throughout that time, and then retire after you get your French nationality. But that's not always possible. I'd like to continue working part-time as a freelancer, teaching a class online, supporting myself with my retirement funds so I wouldn't have the pressure of earning enough for a profession libérale visa. So unfortunately, there's no such thing as having a small hobby that earns money in France. Either you meet the requirements and the income requirements to have profession libérale, to be micro-entrepreneur, to earn 1,800 euros per month as a self-employed person, or you're retired and you're earning nothing. If you are retired, you can't make money. There's no being a part-time freelancer, there's no teaching a class online, there's none of that. If you are being self-employed, then they're looking at you earning 1,800 euros per month, roughly. How long of a wait is common for a residency card for the spouse of an EU citizen after requesting, and what is required for that process? Okay, so this is one of those questions. It takes as long as it takes, and unfortunately, the best thing is to not leave the country until it's done. Our most recent one in Paris, this client began working with us December 2023, and she received her card. It started being valid September 9th, 2024. So 10 months, and that is not unusual. But you have to plan for it to take a long time. In terms of documentation, they're looking for proof of marriage. They're looking for documents related to the EU citizens. They want to see financial statements, either savings or work contract or self-employment income earning at least minimum wage. And they want to see that person's health coverage. And then for you, the non-EU spouse, you're also supposed to have health coverage until you're covered in the French system, and a few other documents. The document burden is not heavy for spouses of EU citizens, but it does take a very long time. Carolyn, what would be the best visa if we want to come and go from France several times a year, year after year, for periods that would be longer than 90 and 180 days? We live in the US and have US passports. Okay, so there's no, if you want to come for periods longer than 90 days, then you have to apply for a short stay or a visa between 4 months and 11 months each time. If you're not intending on residing in France and you don't plan to establish residency in France, then unfortunately there's no visa that enables you to stay as long as you want within a year, but you don't live here. That would be easy to renew. You could potentially get a 1-year temporary visa, which is not renewable from within France. And then in that case, you can travel back and forth during that year. And then at the end of the year, you have to make sure you're out of the country. If you want, you can apply again. But there's nothing that you can renew in France that would do that for you. Is there such a thing in France as a retirement community, apartments or cottages or whatever, with continuing care as you age? There's more like retirement homes that are like nursing homes. I'm not sure in terms of retirement community what's available. And it probably depends a lot on the region too. Keith, I've heard it's very difficult to find an apartment in France as a foreigner. Can you help my wife and I find an apartment? So we don't do apartment searches ourselves, but we do work with somebody who is very good, and she works all over France. So I would encourage you to fill out the referrals questionnaire that I put in the chat so that we can introduce you to her. If we go through you to get our initial 1-year visa, are we able to continue with you to obtain the multi-year visa after? We should have our French A2 certification before we leave the States. Yeah, so the way we work is we offer relocation packages. Typically, we're working with somebody for retirement, it's 3 to 4 months before departure. For business, it's more like 6 to 8 months before departure. And then usually we follow you until about 6 months after you arrive. That's usually the point at which everything that we have in our contract, we have done. Now we're just waiting for French administrations to reply to us, and then we continue to reply. It takes as long as it takes. So we're not ending our relationship with you necessarily. It's just that at that point, We only need to be in contact really if you get a letter from SAPAM or if you get a letter to send in your driver's license for exchange or things like that. What we do is we send out renewal reminders at month 7. Your renewal has to be submitted between 2 and 4 months before your visa expires. So we send out the renewal reminders 5 months before your visa expires. If you choose to work with us for the renewal, we send you a list of documents, an invoice, and handle that for you. And then we put you on our list to send you another reminder before that visa expires, and so on. And then at some point, if you choose to do things on your own, we send you an offboarding email with GDPR, blah, blah, blah. We can give you a complete copy of your file. We can delete your information. Here's all your passwords and everything that were created for you. Let us know if you need us in the future. Hillary, should I go over on a long stay visitor visa and then change to the talent visa? No. You should always start with the visa you mean to continue with. It is a bad idea to go with a visitor visa with the intention of changing to something else because it can take an extraordinarily long time and it doesn't always work. I mean, not that it doesn't go through, but it can just drag on forever. It's much better to start the way you mean to continue. Linnell, I've applied for the Social Security number. Is there a rule of how long it takes? No. There is everything in France is it takes as long as it takes, and I cannot give a prediction on any of it. Kelly, I'm a naturalized U.S. citizen without the ability to get a long form birth certificate. Is my U.S. naturalization certificate enough? I would say that's what we would have to try. I can't guarantee it wouldn't be a pain in the neck, but if that's the situation, then that's what we got to do. What documents need an apostille in the residency process? In the residency process, none. We don't typically provide documents with an apostille. Eventually, if you are applying for naturalization, at that point you would request a document with an apostille. Those documents usually need to be less than either 6 months or a year. They'll tell you if they want a document under a certain age, but that basically means that it's not useful to request those documents now because by the time you'd be ready to use them, they would be too old. Jacqueline, will Social Security direct deposit benefits into a French bank account? If not, what is the process? Yes, they will. And actually, I have it on good authority that the US government gets the best exchange rate. So if you can have the funds direct deposited into a French bank account, you should do that. The other thing to let you know is they have been really strict recently on making sure that for visa renewals, they have wanted to see French bank statements showing amounts in euros in French. And so if you are getting your Social Security direct deposited into your French account, then obviously that's going to show the minimum amount you need to renew the visa, and they're not going to bother you for other documents. If you have everything deposited into a US or foreign account and then you're not transferring it regularly into your French account, then you might have issues at the renewal and needing to get translations, and it's a mess. If we're planning a move to France in late winter, early spring of 2027, how soon should we contact you? So if you are looking at a retirement package, then I would say late winter, early spring, probably around Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving 2026, end of the year 2026. We could probably even get away with starting in January. But Angelica, if I've never changed my name for marriage, do I still need to prove I've been married or divorced? Normally not. On your visa application, it does ask for previous names, but they don't ask for documentation of that. Social Security is looking for a paper trail only if your name has changed, so they are not going to care. I would keep a copy of those documents on hand. It's probably most relevant if you either if you're going to get married in France, if you're going to buy property, they may ask for your marriage and divorce certificate, to verify that you're actually divorced and make sure that your previous spouse is not going to have any claim to any property that you purchased, and eventually if you apply for naturalization. But for most things, you're not going to need it. Francis, my wife and I are both under monthly treatment for chronic illnesses with biologic injections that we cannot discontinue. We want to continue the treatment in France while we stay for the 12 months of our long séjour. How can we get help finding doctors and coordinating the continuation of our treatments? Okay, so the best place to look for doctors is on Doctolib. It depends a little bit on if you think I'll put the link to Doctolib in the chat. You can filter for doctors who speak English. Your mileage with actual English speaking may or may not vary. So Part of this depends on whether or not you can get multiple months of said medication upfront. I assume biologics are typically very expensive. Even in France, they can be 2 or 3,000 euros. They're typically not as expensive as they are in the US, but they're still not cheap. I would say look for a specialist on Doctolib. Perhaps plan a scouting trip and meet the doctor and pay out of pocket for an appointment and meet the doctor and explain the situation. Even if you're not enrolled in the French healthcare system yet, you can go to a French doctor, get a prescription, and get medication and pay out of pocket. The problem is when you first arrive, it's going to take up to several months to get you into the French healthcare system. And during that time, either do you have your medication that's covered in the US? Can you go back to the US and get it there while you're waiting to be in the French system? Can you pay out of pocket for it in France? Is it cheaper? There are a couple different options. None of them are great. One option might be a more comprehensive healthcare plan. Most of the temporary healthcare policies you get for the visa are not going to cover pre-existing conditions and things like biologics. So it would either be your US insurance continues to cover you until you cancel it and you continue to pay that until you're in the French system, or something else. Amber, I'm 50 years old, soon to be divorced, don't have a college degree or own a business. How can I move to France? Do I need a degree? Can I start a business just to move to France? Photography, astrology, energy healing work. How would I be able to get a visa with one of these businesses? Okay, any of those businesses could get you a visa. Potentially, you don't have to have a college degree for a profession libérale visa. You don't have to have a previous track record of a successful business, but you do want to make sure that whatever business you're going to be setting up, you're going to be able to make it work, because there's a lot of things to do during your first year in France. It sounds like you have enough money in the bank to live on and pay your expenses, but you don't want to not make any money during the first year. And that can be a challenge that people have when they're pivoting from a job to a business that they're just starting up. I would recommend reading Foolproof French Visa to understand the visa requirements and the different options that you have. We can help you develop the business idea and help you come up with some of the ideas for finding potential clients and making connections and things like that. We can't do that part for you, and we can't run the business for you. I do a lot of work bouncing ideas off with clients to help them figure out how to move a business or start a business in France, but it's going to be a lot of legwork and you want to really think it through. If you're looking to just retire and live in France, then they're looking for about 20-ish thousand euros in the bank in cash. And so if you have more than that, you can qualify for a visitor visa without working. But yeah, I mean, that's a little young to retire. So, Melanie, I'm looking over the list of documents to provide for my minor child's visa application. One says copy of proof of housing or an attestation that mentions the children by name. Can I present the acte de vente of my French house for this? Yeah, that will work. Presumably, you're going to let your kids live in the house. The attestation that mentions the children by name would be like if you're staying with a friend and your friend would write a letter saying that you and your children, and mention the children's names, are going to be living with them and provide the utility bills and all of that. I wanted to ask about applying for the visa and showing them you have insurance for the year. If you're not sure of the dates yet and haven't scheduled a flight, which I won't until I receive my visa confirmed, from what date should I buy the insurance? Okay, so you don't have to provide a flight reservation for the visa application. But what you do want to do is you want to have your temporary housing, your temporary insurance, and the departure date on your visa application all line up. So if you're saying on your visa application that you're going to move to France on April 1st, then your temporary visa policy starts April 1st. Later on, if you buy a plane ticket for like April 4th or March 27th, who cares? But in order for the start date of your visa, you need all of the dates to line up. Most visa application policies will give you a refund if you're rejected for your visa. Douglas, I have an e-resident company in Estonia. If I continue my ownership and delivery of work through that company, how does the entrepreneur visa work or not? So for an entrepreneur visa or any of the self-employment visas, you would need to set up some kind of entity in France. And having a company in Estonia is not necessarily going to facilitate anything for France. If the company is paying you a salary, it could potentially hire you through something called a portage salarial and pay you a salary high enough to sponsor your own work visa. But I would want to run some numbers with you to figure out what's the best option. My last visit to France ended on October 21st, 2024. I plan to return with a visa on April 1st, which would just be under 90 days for non-visa travel. Okay, so if you apply for a French visa, that doesn't have anything to do with the 90-day rule. So if you were traveling as a tourist for France for 90 days, October 1st to December 31st, that's like 93 days, but you get my point. And then you go back to the US, you apply for a visa on January 4th, and you get your passport back on January 11th, you can depart back for France on January 12th, if that's the start date of your visa. Once you have a visa, it's the start date of your visa that matters, not the 90 out of 180-day rule. If I'm planning on renting an apartment in France, what extra fees are there besides rent? Which utilities, other fees? Is it extremely difficult to do this as an American without a service acting as an intermediary? Okay, typically your rental contract is going to stipulate what utilities are included. Usually it's going to be water, electricity, and gas have to be in your name. It is illegal for your landlord to resell them to you. Internet can go either way. If you're in a furnished rental, sometimes internet is in your landlord's name. Elevator fees and things like regular maintenance of the common areas of the building, often part of that is passed along to the tenant. And then in your rental contract, there will be a stipulation of whether it's charge comprise or provision pour charge. If it's charge comprise and it tells you certain things are included, like internet or whatever, the amount that is in your rental contract is the total amount that you pay. If it is provision pour charge, and then it's listing things like water, and some places like our apartment has cold water, hot water, and heat. Other places are heated by electricity or gas, and it would be on those two bills. Our apartment, for example, has cold water, hot water, and heat, and all of those have counters. So we pay a monthly fee for estimated usage, and then the landlord can send us an additional bill if we go over that, or if we don't use as much as was estimated, then we get a refund. If it's charges comprises, it doesn't matter whether you consume more or less than the amount. That is the total amount you pay. If it's provision pour charge, then you pay exactly what you consume and you get a refund if you don't use it all. I would say that yes, it's fairly difficult to find a place without using Garant Me. It really depends on the area, whether or not it's difficult to find a place without some French apartment search agent advocating for you. Cisco. I work for a big tech company in the US as a full-time remote worker and can work from anywhere. Is there a visa I can get to live and work in France for just 1 year? No, sorry. We don't have a digital nomad visa in France, and there's no project to create one. Your company could potentially sponsor you to live and work in France for a year. They could get you a salarié, it's called salarié détaché, an intercompany transfer visa. That would be valid for 1 year. That would keep you under your local contract. But normally in those cases, they still have to follow other French labor law, which typically companies are reluctant to do. I've been seeing ads on social media for these different global payroll companies where they can manage payroll for all kinds of companies around the world, but your company would have to be willing to do that for you, and how much they're willing to invest in giving you the ability to do that. We actually have a client who is working on a sort of startup concept of helping people work remotely by organizing their payroll for like US based employers, but I don't know what stage he's in now. He's here and has set up the company, and I don't know what else is going on with that. Is this tax rule the same for Canadians? Do we pay taxes on Canadian retirement income? Yes, I believe for Canadians, the tax treaty says that your pensions are taxable in France. Wow, I'm impressed that we got through all of those questions so quickly. Okay, so what else can I tell you? If you would like to purchase foolproof French visas to learn about all your different visa options and how to apply, it's going to be on that link that I just put in the chat. If you would like to schedule an individual consultation, you can do that here. In terms of our relocation packages, we work with people, as I mentioned, typically 3 to 8 months before departure, depending on whether they're retiring or starting a business, and for up to 6 months after they arrive. And those packages are going to include assisting with the visa application process, all of our client materials, and then things like getting you registered on the healthcare system, exchanging your driver's license if you're eligible, registering your business if you're starting a business, et cetera, et cetera. So please do reach out to us if you would like a proposal for our services. I can give you that link as well. If you would like to receive a proposal for assistance with your relocation to France, you can fill out that form there. All right, couple of quick last questions. Is a Canadian driver's license exchangeable for a French one? Most provinces are. I think there's 8 out of the 11, so I don't know them off the top of my head, but there's an 88% chance, 78% chance that they are. Are U.S. IRA distributions taxed for PUMA? No, pensions are not taxed for PUMA. It doesn't matter if it's a local government pension, an IRA, 401k, Social Security, whatever, it is not taxed for PUMA. All right. Thank you so much for attending this month's Q&A. The next one is going to be on Monday, February 3rd. So I will see you there. If you are already registered, you should also receive the link. It goes out 24 hours before the Q&A and then again 1 hour before, so you don't need to worry if you haven't received it a couple days before. And in the meantime, if you would like to get in touch with us to start your relocation and start your 2025 plan to move to France, then please go ahead. You can also email us at welcome@yourtransformation.com. And I will see you next month. Thanks for coming. Bye.